Hey everybody, welcome back to Tommy's Tesla Tech and Travel, and this is a comic book edition, and it's an unboxing. But not just any unboxing. This represents one of the last two Grail books that's been on my list for many years. Let me give you a little background first. You see, I've always loved collecting certain niche comic books, books that not every collector necessarily goes after, things that mean something to me. And the book we're talking about today actually has very, very large significance in my comic book collecting life and history. But let me explain to you how we got to this particular book that we're going to unbox today. I love creating certain characters, certain subcategories. Like I'm a big Captain America guy. I love Invincible. I love Chew. I love the Ninja Turtles. That's the big one I collect. And I also love to collect characters to me that have historical significance. And by that I mean like Marvel and DC. DC was kind of late to the game with it, but Marvel was really quick about including African American superheroes very early on in the civil rights movement. And I always thought that was very fascinating. So the longest time, my Grail book was a very specific character, and this is not the one we're talking about today, this is just one to kind of explain how we got there, was the Black Panther. So for the longest time, one of my big Grail books, got a little reflection there, one of my big Grail books was the very first appearance, which I was lucky enough to get through our friends over at Presidio Comics. They got one in the collection, and they made sure that I was that kind of there for me. I love this character, and I love what he represents. He was a strong, positive African-American role model in the comic book industry when there wasn't a whole lot of representation out there. So I love collecting these type of characters. I mean, I love the Black Panther a lot. T'Challa is one of my favorite characters. So I also have his first title in his own series. Although I really do want to collect the Two Guns Kid, I believe it's called. Technically could be considered his first appearance, but it depends on who you talk to. I think it is personally. And I know there's a shop out there that I frequent quite a bit that has one. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. The next character was also Luke Cage, because he really represented the times where this book was, first popular and first came out. It was at a time in the height of the civil rights movement. The Harlem Renaissance had just kind of hitting towards its plateaued end, and he represented a hero for the people. That's why he's a hero for hire. I love Luke Cage. I picked this up in Vancouver, Washington at a store called I Like Comics. And also, you all know I love Captain America. That's my favorite superhero of all times. And who's his partner? The Falcon. Here's his first appearance in a 2.5 grade. I got from our friends over at Lady T Comics a while back. I don't collect the highest grade books. I collect them because I want them in my collection, and I love these characters. So the trend, again, is really important African-American superheroes with lots of significance in the comic book collecting community. And I also love the occult. For those of you who read the comics I've written, I wrote one called Chance Tells and the End of Times Cult. And sort of inspiration, not really, it's more like crime noir. Humphrey Bogart was a big inspiration for me, but also the idea of Brother Voodoo. I love this character because, voodoo from that time period representing the African American culture from Louisiana, the South. My father lived for quite a while in Louisiana, so this one meant a lot to me. And there's another one I picked up. I actually picked this one up during the pandemic from an online seller who I've purchased from before. And I also like the kind of kooky one-off characters. Not kooky, but for instance, Lawrence Fishburne, he played this character in Ant-Man and the Wasp and the second Ant-Man movie, Black Goliath. And I thought he did a great job. I really wanted this character to go somewhere in there, but unfortunately did not. But I love this character as well. And there's also those characters that came out from the 90s too that still represented that culture, and probably one of the most famous comic book characters of all times. And that would be Spawn, the very first appearance of Al Simmons. A lot of people forget that Spawn himself was an African-American character. Todd McFarlane was way ahead of the curve on this one. This is my personal copy from many years ago that got signed by Todd. Which leads us to the character we're talking about today. I never thought I would actually get to own this book, so I thought the closest I would ever have is this one right here. It's a Tomb of Dracula, number 13. It's the third appearance and origin of one of my favorite characters of all times, and that's Blade, better known as Eric Brooks. He is the Daywalker, the vampire hunter. And this was, to me, going to be the closest I thought I would ever get to the book I'm going to show y'all today. So early on in my comic book collecting days, I was kind of closeted about it because, I played sports, whatever you want to call it. To me, liking comic books in the mid-90s wasn't very cool. It wasn't until later when all the Marvel movies started coming out that suddenly this weird thing I hid from everybody now made me the coolest guy in the room. So I knew all the backstories before the movies came out. But I used to love spending my time watching cartoons at that point. I would have been 14, 13 at this time. And I loved watching the Spider-Man animated series. I loved watching X-Men, the animated series, of course. I loved all those Marvel cartoons because that's what we had before the true Marvel Cinematic Universe and all the stuff we see now currently with like Disney Plus, for example. And there was one particular episode that really stood out to me when I was watching Spider-Man, the animated series, and they introduced the vampire hunter who was trying to catch Morbius, and his name was Blade. Love the idea of the character, this vampire who has all their strength and none of their weaknesses, except he can walk out in the sunlight, but he still craved the blood. And it was up to him to fight that hunger and that thirst. Love the idea of the character. He only appeared in a couple episodes of the animated series, but it kind of turned me on to the idea of who Blade was. And that wasn't a comic I necessarily read at the time, but that introduced me to the character, so I started following up on him. And then in 1998, a movie came out that not only changed, I think, my comic book loving life, but also changed the Marvel Cinematic Universe in that direction where these are now viable books. Everyone gives credit to X-Men being like the first, Marvel true comic book movie out there of a success. People forget about Blade. I mean, before Blade, you also had like Swamp Thing and the original Captain America movie, which is not great, but it's there. And a bunch of other like those kind of one-off comic book movies. I mean, you had Steel over there from DC starring Shaquille O'Neal in those mid-90s. But to me, Blade was the first one that took the genre truly serious. I mean, it was rated R, there was cursing, there was vampires being decapitated and staked. Like, it was everything we wanted to see in that type of comic book movie without giving it the respect it deserved as a true like story to be told, as opposed to being like, oh, I'll make this for the kids and hopefully they enjoy it. So Blade came out, and I think that really ushered in the ability for someone like Bryan Singer to pitch the idea of X-Men, because look how successful Blade was. I mean, Blade spawned 2 additional sequels. Trinity, not so great, but I still enjoyed it. But Blade 2 was awesome, and Guillermo del Toro, I mean, he jumped in there, and we all love everything he's done, right? So Blade, to me, is one of those significant characters, especially in the genre of the African-American like characters that never got their due respect, and actually got to represent a huge part of the culture that went unspoken for a long time. And then we got to the Marvel Universe, and now they're introducing him, starring on Mahershala Ali is going to be Blade. I mean, hopefully. I know there's been some controversy of him still taking the role or not, but I cannot wait to see how they portray him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. To me, that's a character that could save the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because right now it's not doing so hot, y'all. With all that being said, let's unbox the book I'm talking about today. And you already know what it is, but there's a twist I guarantee you're not expecting. Stay tuned to the end. All right, guys, so I kind of already pre-opened it. I haven't taken it out yet. I know what it is. I know what the grade is I bought it, but you guys don't. So let me show you here. And shout out to the folks I bought it from. It was a great deal on the book, except it got sent to the wrong address at first. I was like, oh my goodness. It got sent to the right address, wrong zip code and cities for some reason. But they were good. As soon as they got it back in, they shipped it out immediately, and I got it back faster the second time around. So thank y'all for sending it out. And I'll give a shout out to their store here in a second, because it looked like they had some pretty good books, and they have a 100% review on eBay. Their store is called Duncanville Bookstore. So I'll show you all that part right there. I don't know how well you can see it. I'll put a link down below for them, because like I said, they had some good books, and I think I got a great deal on this one. And here's that book. Tomb of Dracula 10, the very first appearance of Blade the Vampire Hunter. Ha! What makes this one unique, it's a witness signature, so this is actually signed in front of a CBCS representative or employee, and it's signed by Marv Wolfman, who actually created the character, and Roy Thomas. I know what you're thinking. Roy Thomas really had nothing to do with the book. I think that's why this book sat for so long, is people like, Roy Thomas, why is he on there? He actually was the editor-in-chief of Marvel at the time, and his name is on the inside page as the editor-in-chief. He took over for Stan Lee when Stan Lee, stopped being the day-to-day operations guy. So it's signed by both of them, and they're witness signatures. Yes, it's a 3.0 with off-white pages, but like I said earlier, this book is not for, resell or, oh man, hope I get to retire off this one day. This is a book that means a lot to me, and I've wanted it in my collection forever. And this represents one of the last 2 Grails that's on my list from when I started collecting eons ago. The only one left for me to try and track down at a decent price at some point is going to be Avengers number 4, the first appearance of Captain America in the Silver Age. Guys, I've been very fortunate in the last 5-6 years where I've been able to really get the books that have been significant to me. And it was through hard work, searching, and not just settling for anything, like looking for that right deal, that right price, that right book. And luckily I have a very amazing wife who understands how much this means to me. And as she points out to people, there's husbands out there doing horrible things. The worst thing mine does is he buys electronics every now and then, and he buys comic books. I appreciate you and I love you, honey. And if we ever get divorced, good luck taking these from my hands. No, I'm kidding. So that's it, guys. Tomb of Dracula number 10 is definitely off-white, a little off-centered. In fact, now that I'm looking at it, I'm a little shocked it got a 3.0, but I think CBCS grades very harshly. So if they say 3.0, I trust them. I believe them. No argument on my end. So that's now one of the pivotal books in my collection. I never thought I would ever own this book, and here it is. In fact, I thought the closest I got to meet Marv Wolfman a number of years ago at Tucson Comic-Con, and I actually bought an 11 by 17 of this cover. He was nice enough to sign it for me, and we had a brief conversation and talked about it a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I would love to get this book for you. And back to what I said earlier about being patient and finding the right book, I actually had the opportunity to buy even a lower grade of this book, also signed by Marv Wolfman, but it was unverified. I know his signature, so I knew it was legit, but it was still an unverified signature. And it was almost a detached cover. It was barely hanging on by a thread. So technically it was a detached cover, and they wanted $1,200 for it. And I thought about it. Because at that time, it was right after the COVID outbreak was kind of winding down. But we saw a huge uptick in those prices. And that was one of those situations I was like, am I ever going to get an opportunity like this again? Should I just jump on it now? But luckily, cooler heads prevailed. I had a long conversation with my buddy Eric over there at Presidio Comics, as he was also interested in possibly buying it. And he agreed. He's like, I just don't see it being worth it. And I agreed with him, and here we are. I got this for about half the price. We negotiated, ended up paying just a little over $500 for it, which I know is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware. But I think between these signatures, the condition, and the historical significance of the book, and the fact that we are going to see that character soon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it was a great investment. And like I said earlier, I don't plan on getting rid of these books ever, but one day when they go to my kids after I'm long left this earth, I want to make sure they're kind of cataloged and well organized, so it'll be easier on them. Or if they want to keep them, it's easier for them to divvy it up because they know exactly what the book is, and it'll be easier for them to research at that point. But guys, that's it. That's my unboxing. One of my holy grails is now in my collection. Thank you guys for taking a look at it. Thank you for watching another comic book edition of Tommy's Tesla Tech and Travel. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. I have the feeling we're going to do more comic book related stuff, to much people's chagrin, but it's something I enjoy doing. So hopefully you guys like it as well. Yeah, let's take another ride again soon. Bye-bye, everybody.